Hi everybody, it's Shelby here. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about all the books that I read for January. So I'm going to be giving you a little bit of descriptions of the books and kind of what my thoughts were. And yeah, so let's get into it. First, I'm going to give you some stats of the amount of books that I read. So I read 14 books in total in January, which some of them were more like novellas. They weren't like full-length novels, so I'm still counting that as my total 14. All of those books were romance in some form of the romance genre, and all of them were written by women. I did, so like the subcategories of my genres was I read 4 historical romances, 4 sci-fi romance, 2 dark romance, 2 erotic romance, 1 paranormal romance, and then 1 contemporary romance. And then I didn't have that great of a rating month. I had 0 5-star reads, 4 4-star reads, 7 3-star reads, 3 2-star reads, and then 0 1-star reads. So overall, nothing that I DNF'd or absolutely hated, but also nothing that I absolutely loved. It was just kind of a meh month. So those are all the stats. I'm probably going to start out with my lowest books, like stats, and then work my way up to the highest rated ones. So let's just get started with that. So the first book that I read in January was a novella, and I actually only gave this 2 stars. It's called Sexiest Billionaire by Cartwright. So this was like a contemporary romance novella, and it's about this guy who is going to this like exclusive like BDSM club that he goes to, and his business associate's daughter happens to be there, and so then he throws like a fit. He's like, oh my gosh, my business partner, his daughter's here, what's she doing here? Oh. And they ended up getting into a relationship together, having like a sexual relationship. So that's the premise of this story. I didn't really like it. It wasn't that it was a bad story, I just didn't like because it felt very rushed. I thought the writing could have been better, and it was very unrealistic. It was very insta-love. If you want to read this, spoilers ahead, but he ends up saying that he wants to marry her after only like this is almost his first encounter with her, and they just had like sex, and it's just, I don't know, it wasn't that great. I didn't really care for it. But then the next book that I read that was another 2-star read for me was The Sharp Edge of Bliss by Sorcha. I think that's how you say the name, Sorcha Black. So this story was very confusing to me. It's about this girl, and she doesn't exactly know how old she is. We think she's at least 18, we think, and she gets hired. She's like basically a prostitute. She gets hired by this guy, and I think he's a hitman, maybe. It doesn't ever really say what he is, but he has this guy that's with him that he calls his boy, and he's all upset. So the hitman guy hires this girl to be submissive to his partner, maybe, to make him happy. And they end up forming like a menage relationship by the end of it, but it was weird. It was very confusing. I didn't really understand any of the characters and why they were there, and it felt like she, like, a whole book is told from her point of view, but it felt like the only reason she was there was to get the two male characters together, that the two male characters loved each other, but they were too stubborn to, like, say that they loved each other. I don't know. And it was eh. And I didn't really care for it. Went much more into, it did have BDSM in it, but it went much more into the, like, sadism and masochism aspect of it, which I don't really care for. It does contain, like, abuse. There's blood play, which if you're not familiar with that, it's weird. I've never read blood play outside of, like, a vampire romance, so that was weird. Yeah, I didn't really care for it. When they did all three of them fall in love with each other, it wasn't, like, super believable to me, and I just didn't understand why she liked them, because the two guys were terrible to her. It was meh. I didn't care for it. And then the next one I actually have a physical copy of. So I read A Quick Bite by Lynsay Sands, and I was pretty excited to read this one because I had heard that this was a pretty, like, humorous book. It doesn't take itself seriously, and it's, like, one of those, like, guilty pleasure types of books. I ended up giving this 2 stars. I just did not like this. I did read the whole book, and I almost stopped at one point, but I did finish it. So this is about a psychologist, and he gets kidnapped by this vampire lady to cure her daughter, who has a phobia about blood. Anytime she sees blood, she faints. So her mom kidnaps him to try and cure her. So the reason why I didn't like this was I thought the writing was bad. No offense to Lynsay Sands. I still would like to read some more of hers just to see if all of her writing is like this, or if maybe she just gets better with different books. I don't know if it's just because she's trying to be humorous in this one. I'm not really sure. This is my only Lynsay Sands books that I've ever read. But it just felt like she was trying to put in, like, fancy words here and there. It didn't make any sense. There was a lot of side characters that just didn't need to be in here, that if they weren't here, literally nothing would have changed with the plot. The bad guy, there is a bad guy in here, was blatantly obvious who he was, and because the main characters, the chick, didn't figure it out, she's an idiot. She's 200 years old, so she shouldn't be that stupid, but she is super stupid. It was terrible, and I didn't think the love story was very believable. And again, spoilers ahead if you would like to read this book, which I gave it 2 stars, so I don't know. The whole point of the book, which is her trying to get her phobia cured, doesn't get solved. You get to the end of the book, and she's still terrified of blood. Well, I guess not terrified, but she still faints at the sight of blood. He didn't do literally anything that set up the whole plot of this book, and I was so frustrated by that. So I did not care for it. Okay. So I think that is all my 2 stars. So then we'll get into my 3 star, which is my biggest category for this month. Like I said, all my books that I read were just kind of meh. They were okay. So the first one that's the 3 star, which was actually my second read for the month, was The Alien King's Baby, a sci-fi alien romance by Shea, I'm not sure, Malloy. I ended up getting into, like, an alien romance mood for whatever reason. So this is about this girl, and there's this alien that it was kind of confusing. She ends up getting pregnant, but not in like a traditional sense of how one would get pregnant. There was these two different alien races, and this one guy that impregnated her had stolen the essence of this other alien guy who's like the king of his alien race, and it was really weird. And he like injects the king alien's essence into this girl, so that's how she becomes pregnant, even though, no, whatever. So the alien king ends up taking her because she's pregnant with his heir, and they end up having a romance. Like I said, it was weird. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't like super amazing, but it wasn't terrible either. It was fun and it was quick, and I mean, I did have some issues with the pacing, because sometimes in the book it would get a little bit confusing because it made it seem like some things happened, like it started to sound like a thing happened like a long period of time happened, but then it was only like a small period of time, and it was very confusing with that. And I wish it would have been a little bit more developed and a little bit longer instead of being like a novella length. I wish it was a full-fledged novel, and I think some of the issues that I had could have been played out and developed more, and it would have been a little bit better. But anyway, so the next 3-star read that I had was My Dad's Best Friend by Katee Robert, and this is part of her A Touch of Taboo series, I think it is. So this is just, she was writing these books just for fun outside of her normal like book schedule that she has. So this is about this girl who has a crush on her dad's friend, his like business partner, and she goes to his house because she wants him to help her with this business something or other, and they end up having a sexual relationship. So I am a big fan of Katee Robert. I really like her stuff, but this is only a 3-star read, and I almost put it as a 2. I'm still debating on it just because I was really disappointed by this, mostly because it has basically the same plot as her first book in the A Touch of Taboo series, which is about this girl who ends up sleeping with her ex-fiance's dad. I mean, other than different names, and they kind of have a little bit different backgrounds, and the sexual scenes that are featured are somewhat different. Other than that, it's basically the same thing. She ends up staying over at his house for the weekend so they can get out the sexual tension kind of out of their systems kind of thing. But I wish there's so many other ways that she could have gone with a dad's best friend story, and I was just really sad that she basically just did the same thing as the first one. So, oh well. I mean, I'm still gonna keep reading Katee Robert because I love her, but I was very disappointed. And then the next one that I read, which technically this I'm gonna give 3.5 stars, I think. Yes. So I read Enthralled by Giana Darling. This is part of her Enslaved duet, which I did also read the second book, and that was, let me think, Enamoured, which that one I gave 4 stars. So I'll kind of talk about both of those together. So this is about this girl who, she's Italian, and her dad is in debt with the mafia. So her dad decides to sell her to pay off his debts, and she gets sold to this British guy who's like really rich. I think he might be like some sort of lord or something, And so that's like the premise of this book. She is sold as a sex slave to him. Now these are definitely dark romances. This did get a lot darker than some of the dark romances that I like to read. And again, it plays into the whole BDSM aspect, but it was much more on the realm of the sadism and masochism, and also instead of just like a normal dominant and submissive, it was a master and slave role, which is much further than I usually like to read in my BDSM romances. So I did enjoy it, so that's why I give it 3.5 stars. I just didn't really like their relationship because I felt like it was a really bad setup for them to have that relationship. He is not good for her. It's a really bad relationship, but she ends up falling in love with him, and it has that, you know, feeling of Stockholm syndrome a little bit. But, and then the second book I liked better because I felt like the relationship grew a lot more. It's, you know, the conclusion to their story. I liked that it had more growth for the male character. He kind of recognized some of the things that he did to her was wrong, and he like apologizes to her for those things. So I felt like them being in love started to make more sense. It wasn't just because she was a captive of him, you know, she was his slave. They still did the master slave kink just because that's what she grew used to. That's kind of what their thing was, and that she ended up enjoying it. But I thought that the background and premise of it made more sense because she wasn't doing it against her will. She voluntarily wanted to be with him and wanted to engage in this kink with him. And like I said, I liked that the male character, and since I didn't really care for him as much in the first one, he had a lot more character growth, which I appreciated. So I gave it 4 stars. This one is going to be another 3-star read. So I read The Virgin and the Rogue by Sophie Jordan. I got a bunch of historical romances, which I will be featuring a like haul video about those, so stay tuned for that. But this is about this girl. Her name's Charlotte. She has an older sister and a younger sister. Her older sister is already married, and Charlotte is kind of the person. She is going to do what she's supposed to and what society expects of her, and she's supposed to get married to this guy who was her friend growing up, but he's super dull and boring, and his family's terrible, and she doesn't really like him and want to get married to him, but she's adamant that she's going to because that's what she's supposed to do, and that's what like I said, society expects of her. So her brother-in-law, his stepbrother, ends up stopping by their house and just on his way because he's like traveling through, and her younger sister likes to dabble in like, she almost sounds like she wants to be like a doctor or a physician, and she likes making these like tonics and like potions or whatnot. So at the start of this book, Charlotte is about to have her menstrual cycle, and she's having really bad cramps. So her younger sister gives her like this tonic and is like, hey, take this and it might help some of your cramping. But she changes the formula somewhat, and it almost becomes like an aphrodisiac to her. She just gets, honestly, like really horny. And she stumbles into her brother-in-law's stepbrother like in the hallway, and they have almost like a sexual I mean it's a sexual encounter. They didn't actually have like sex in the hallway, so things just ensue from there because he's like, whoa, this chick is all over me. what's going on here? And then they start to like get to know each other, and he's like, man, I really like this chick, but she's still very like, no, that was just a fluke. It was just the tonic that I took. I have to marry this guy, even though, and he's like, why? You don't even like him. What are you doing? So, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was very steamy for a historical romance. But again, I thought this was a little bit too insta-lovey. I wish the love part of the two characters could have been a little bit more fleshed out, made it a little bit more believable. It was much more like insta-lust than insta-love, I feel like. But yeah, so there's that one. The next three are from the Bridgerton series, so I'm trying to make a vlog of this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail of these because I'll be talking more about those in the vlog that I'm doing, but I'm trying to read the whole Bridgerton series. So I read The Duke and I, which is the first one, The Viscount Who Loved Me, which is the second one, and An Offer from a Gentleman, which is the third book. And I gave all of these like 3 stars. So this is a family, it features a family, the Bridgerton family, and there's 8 siblings, so each book is about a different sibling and them finding love. These are okay. I wish I liked them better. I was hoping I would like them better just because of all the hype around these books because of the Netflix show, but they were just kind of that's probably all I'm going to say about them right now, because like I said, I'm going to have a separate video devoted all to those books. 3 books that I read that were also 4-star reads happened. I read these more at the beginning of the month when I was in like a sci-fi romance mood. So these are all part of Ruby Dixon's Ristiverse series. So I read When She's Ready, When She's Married, and then When She Purrs by Ruby Dixon. So these all take place on this planet called, I think it's like Rista 3, I think is the planet name. And it's about these women that are there. And these women were all captives at one point or stolen from Earth. And wherever they were at, if they were slaves or whatever happened to them, they were set free. But in this universe, it's almost like the alien races don't want Earth to really find out that aliens exist. So all these women can't return to Earth because they could, expose that there's aliens out in the world. So they're given like these plots of land on this planet and become farmers, but even then they're not really treated all that well, and they can still get like killed or like raped, and people take advantage of them and try to take their land away from them. So the best way for them to not have their land taken away is to get married to an alien that can protect them. So that's kind of what happens. That's the premise of the first book. And it was pretty fun. I enjoyed it. It was just a novella length. And the second one was also a novella length. The second one was kind of funny. She ends up putting an ad in the paper saying that she wants a husband. So then she gets this guy that comes and is like, hey, I'm gonna be your husband. And then the third one was actually a full novel length. And it was this girl ends up hiring a bounty hunter to find her a husband because she's scared because her neighbor keeps acting really weird, and she's afraid that her neighbor is gonna like kill her or rape her, and the bounty hunter ends up getting her neighbor to marry her, and like, hey, I found this guy to be your husband, here he is, and she's like, that's not who I wanted to be my husband. But it turns out it was just kind of a miscommunication between the races. So the guy is like a cat alien race, so some of the things he was doing was like traditional for his race, and she was like, that's not, no, I don't like that. So I thought it was really cute. I liked them trying to get to know each other. They ended up becoming friends, and just kind of explaining each other, because like at one point I just laughed. She ended up like cooking for him, and she made this dish that had like bread in it, and with his race, he's a carnivore. He only eats meat, but he ate it anyway, even though like from his point of view, he was like, oh, this is disgusting, I can't stand it, but she's so sweet and made it for me, so I'm gonna eat it anyway, even though I hate it. And I just thought that was so cute. He was such a sweet guy, and he just wanted to take care of her and love her, and he thought she was so great. I just thought it was so cute. I loved it. That's it. I think that's all of the books that I read in January. So hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Thanks.